As I said in the last two sessions, this is the book that changed the children's and family ministries world when George Barner wrote this book based on research. And in it, he stated this statement that made me sit up and think, the enemy has plans for our children. The question is, do we? As I said, sometimes we assume, we often say, wait till you're old enough, and we entertain more than actually disciple. Disciple, I believe, is not a program. Disciple is not a program. It's a relationship, and that is built over time. I've also said the other day that research says very clearly, both across the world and also in Australia, that children are more likely to make a decision to follow Jesus before they reach their teenage years. This is recent McCrindle research, well respected. And if you can identify a particular age, how old were you when you first became a Christian, you can see a lot of them are under 5, and definitely they're under 20. 4 in 5 faith decisions are made before the age of 20. And I left you with a question the other day as to where does your church spend most of its budget dollars when it comes to evangelism? And that's something to think about as well. Right across the world, they say that we're experiencing a loss, a bleed, a slow bleed from our pews. And that is that children were there today, for whatever reason, drift out tomorrow. And if we could but close our back doors and keep our kids, our churches will be full and overflowing. Now, I know there's various reasons why this occurs, and we could discuss them till the cows go home, but here's what the researchers are saying. Despite all our incredible children's, youth and young adult programs, we've not been able to stop this mass exodus from our churches. We've not just lost one generation, we are losing several. Now, I don't know if you've had the time, but I have taken the time to go through the AUC. They do, I think it's every 12 months, a Pew research as to who is in church today. And that's one of the few snapshots the churches do, Adventist churches do in Australia. And I've been tracking that over the past 20 years or so, especially for the conferences that I've been involved in, North South Wales and now Greater Sydney. And you can almost see it on the graph that you have this high attendance up until the primary years, and it's actually in the junior years that it begins to drop off. Junior years. And kids are leaving or choosing to leave. And it's often in the junior years, it's not just the child leaving, it's also a family leaving as well. And the problem is it's a slow drift. If half the kids got up and walked out today, they'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. But it's often one child, one family at a time. And I guess for me, I want to do all I can to stop that. Yes, I know I need to reach every man, woman and child, and the gospel needs to go to all the world. That's what I'm here for as a pastor. But if we're out there reaching the lost and we're losing our own in the process, then I have a problem with that. I have a problem with that because these are kids that have gone to our Pathfinder clubs, have gone to our adventurers, have gone to our schools, have gone to our churches and gone to our big camps, and what's going on? I want to know. And make the changes necessary to make sure we do grow, disciple and keep our kids for a lifetime. A Canada faith study recently said we are losing more young people between childhood and adolescence than between adolescence and young adult years. And they said more young males are leaving the church than young females. Boys, our men. I want to do something about that. So people have asked, why am I wearing this shirt? This is the first prototype which I put together. I began in Greater Sydney, a men's ministry, men's barbecues, moving around the conference and just getting men together to be men and talk about what it means to be an authentic man in your home, in your church, in your community, in your marriage, in your school, and or wherever you go. And I believe we can raise a generation of authentic men. Will go a long way to growing and keeping our boys as well. Because often, and I'll show a few slides in a moment, there's huge questions today around what masculinity is and what it means to be a young male and what it means to be a man in today's society. And there's reasons why that's occurring. But often we talk about toxic masculinity, but we don't talk about what good masculinity really is. So because of my role in family ministries, men's ministries falls under that. And Greater Sydney has a really powerful women's ministry and really powerful women's rallies. And the idea grew out of when I went to a women's rally just recently in Greater Sydney, and the hall was full of women at that rally. And I was just there supporting the Women's Ministries Director. I turned up as the conference worker just to stack the chairs and open doors and close doors and just support Meliopa, who's our Women's Ministry Director. Anyway, out of that, I had not just one, but quite a number of women say, "Pastor Daron, I hear you're the new family ministries for our conference. What are you doing for my husband?" And it was more than one. I thought, okay, haven't put a budget in. I better go and do something about this. So I went back to the office, and it actually happened at a really hard time in ministry where I was having a really hard time, and I lost a male mate who committed suicide, a male pastor mate. And I came pretty close to quitting. I was pretty done. And I remember that morning I said to God, "Look, God, I know you're there, but I know it says do not put God to the test, but I want you to, if you're there, to show yourself to me today in a powerful way." Now, I didn't give any more conditions than that. Just show yourself to me in a powerful way today. Anyway, I went to the office and I put a little bit of an agenda together of dates and men's barbecues and men's rallies I was going to put together around the conference, and press send on the email to my admin to ask them to have a look at that. And then literally walked across the road. For those that know Warunga, you've got the division office, and Greater Sydney's in one end of the division office at the moment while they rebuild at Epping. And literally walked across the road to an appointment at the school. And I sat down with her, she was a teacher, and talked to her and prayed with her. And I got up and I was walking out, I just grabbed the door handle. She said, "Stop, Pastor Daron. I've got another question for you. What are you doing for men's ministry?" Now, I didn't even mention I needed money or I just put a budget. I said, just so happened I'd just submitted a budget. This is what I'm planning to do. Well, I'd like to donate some money towards that. And I said, "Oh yeah, 500 or 1,000. Yeah, donations are gratefully received." No. God has given me a blessing of some money that I want to give to a Pacific ministry, and He's impressing me to give you $6,000. I've never in all my family children's ministries ever had someone donate that amount of money. So next day she walks across to the office and pulls out $100 bills and says, "Oh, by the way, Pastor Daron, there's not $6,000 here." I said, "That's okay." I said, "All donations received." "No, I prayed to God. He said that you needed $7,000. So I'm giving you $7,000. Is that you, God?" Unbelievable. Then a week later, another woman comes to see me and says, "God's told me I need to give you some money for men's ministry." I hadn't even mentioned I need money to anyone. And said, "I want to give you a donation." I said, "Yep, thank you." Said, "No, I want to give you $10,000 for men's ministry." Do we need to do men's ministry? I believe that God is saying, I believe that the partners are saying, we need to do something for our men. So I'll talk a bit more of that in a moment. But I think that, reaching and growing authentic men is powerful in some of this sort of things as well. David Kinnaman, Barna Research, you lost me, said, like a Geiger counter under a mushroom cloud, the next generation is reacting to the radioactive intensity of social, technological, we talked about some of those yesterday, and religious changes. And for the most part, we are sending them into the world unprepared to withstand the fallout. So if we're not sending them into the world with the tools that they need to survive in the world they find themselves in today. Then Ken Ham, this one been out for a little while, and it really shocked me when I read it. Ken Ham is the Australian creation science person. He's based in the States. He's the guy that built that huge Noah's Ark that you walk through, a real live one. So he's an Australian guy in the US. And he did some research, and he found students didn't begin doubting in college. They simply departed by college. So if you look around in your church today, 2/3 of those who are sitting amongst us have already left in their hearts. They just act on it when they get their P's or their job or leave home. As I said, from what McCrindle's saying, these decisions are made really, really early in life. Moral compass by the age of 9, spiritual identity by the age of 13, according to Barna Research. And Ellen White said exactly the same stuff that Quota put up the other day as well in the first episode in this series. In the UK, Jason Gardner said, if the church is hemorrhaging young people, we have to ask ourselves if it's because we address the issue of discipleship too late. Is the spiritual education we provide for our young people neither consistent enough or rigorous enough to provide them with the means to have a strong and stable faith in a time when there are many challenges to the authenticity and relevance of our beliefs? With the advent of the technological age and Google and Siri and all of that, YouTube, social media, our kids are getting flooded with information. And unless we talk about it with them first, we're up against it. And that takes time. In all of this, Christian Smith and Patricia Snell in their research, Souls in Transition, found that parents are the single most important influence on the religious outcomes in lives of young adults. On the other hand, teenage participation in evangelisation, missions and youth groups does not predict a high level of religiosity just a few years later. And I think we as a church need to apologise a little bit, because we've often said, send your kids to our churches and we will pass on the faith. Or we've said, send your kids to the schools and the schools will pass on the faith. We have said that. And so we pay good school fees and we pay good tithe dollars, and then often we blame the youth director or the school teachers when things go wrong. But as I said in the first episode of first workshop, left to do the job by themselves, the school and the church can only impart enough faith to inoculate our kids against taking it seriously. If faith is not in the home, then it's going to be a hard time for our children. I mean, the Holy Spirit does do wonders and does do miracles, and there are hundreds of unchurched kids being reached in our schools. Don't doubt me. I love chaplains. I did chaplaincy last year, and amazing miracles occur. But in general, if faith is not in the home, kids are less likely to take it seriously. Vern Bankston spent his whole life studying generations and how faith is passed on. And at the end of his life, he published his thesis and job done. But yeah, he studied generation after generation after generation in a longitudinal study. This is what he found. The influence within the home can be more powerful than forces at church, school, or in society at large. This was the same for those who were religious and those who were not. What he said was, when all the hens come home to roost, using a chook term. By the way, I just found out before I came here, at the Sydney Royal, I didn't just win Best Japanese and champion there, but I won champion Japanese, not just of its colour, but I actually won champion Japanese overall. They've just put the results up, so I'm crowing today that I've actually won champion Japanese at the Sydney Royal and reserve champion. So overall, first and second Japanese are Pastor Daron's chooks. So, yeah. Anyway, back to where we were. When all the hens come home to roost, he said, taking everything into account, children are more likely to be as religious as their parents are religious. Now that really strikes me as a dad, because it's not just the dad at church or Pastor Daron out on camps, things like that. It's when I go home, my marriage and my parenting and how I act when the chips are down. And yeah, the kids have a front row seat to our religious lives. Not looking for not looking for perfect religious lives, but authentic religious lives. There's a big difference. He said that children are more likely to adopt the faith of their parents and the religiousness of their parents, and children act on what they have seen in their parents' relationship with God and each other. What he also identified, thankfully, was when kids choose to leave, what brings them back? And he said, number one, it's a non-judgmental, loving parent. A non-judgmental, loving parent who loves their kids no matter what. Doesn't nag them, but loves them no matter what. Who keeps going through the religious motions of what they've always done. That is, on Sabbath you go to church and you get involved in church and you do this and you do that. You still maintain your religious practices that you do. That brings them back. And number three, praying. There's nothing more powerful than the power of a praying parent praying for the child who, whatever reason, has chosen to wander in a different path. And also remembering that the research says it might not be in our lifetime, but he says they will come back. The old idea in Proverbs of train up a child in the way they should go. Then it says, when they are old, they will not depart from it. That might be when I have gone to my rest. But I can know if I am faithful in my family, God will reward that. God will reward that. Also remember, of course, that there's no guarantees. God made us all with free choice as well. But Australian National Christian Life Survey recently again found role models for faith. The most significant people who show me what faith is about, number one is not the pastor. It's mother, 59%. Number two, father, 40%. Number three, the minister, the pastor, or the priest is in there at a lower than 40%. It's 28%. Then spouse, then grandparents, peers or friends, other family, speakers at events, Sunday school teachers, etc., etc. Once again, you see, the most significant role models for faith is not the youth director, is not the school teacher, is not even the pastor. It is mum and it is dad. As I said earlier, the enemy has plans for our children. Have you heard of this guy? Hands up if you've heard of this guy. A few of you have. If you haven't, then you can guarantee that your kids have. This guy, Andrew Tate, cracked the code of how to bring, more particularly young men to his pages. He's a star when it comes to YouTube and to TikTok and to an online presence. And this guy went on Big Brother and is an ex-kickboxer. I think he's a world champion. And then he launched his online presence. And I don't know if you just go home and Google him. But the stuff he promotes is misogynistic. It is anti-women. It is, I don't know how else to describe it. It is just terribly toxic, macho, male masculinity that kids are searching for. And in our schools, if you ask kids who their heroes are, even just last week, this guy's been arrested in Romania for sexual trafficking and producing pornography online with this sexual trafficking. He's currently being held in detention in Romania. Yet, just last week, despite him being held since Christmas time, he's now been in detention still. They've got till June, apparently, to bring the charges forward. But when kids are asked in school who your heroes are, the boys, you think, oh, yep, I'll name a cricketer, a rugby league player, an AFL player. At least that was my generation. No, these boys are still naming Andrew Tate as their hero. And he has 11.6 billion subscribers. And most of those are young teenage males. The enemy has plans for our kids. And then I think this is yesterday in our newspaper, it says class warfare, assaults in schools in New South Wales, that is up by 50% over a decade. My wife is a teacher in state system. And the school she's left, where she's taught for the last 16 years, apparently this year alone, almost every day, there's been a lockdown at her old school for a violent incident that's occurred. The kids are running riot, and teachers are now restricted from touching the kids. You can't touch the kids anymore. And you can't block a kid if they want you to leave the classroom. There's all these rules in place what a teacher can and can't do. The enemy has plans for our kids. The question is, do we? But it says there in the fine print, assaults in the state schools have jumped 50% in the past decade, rising to a level where police are notified of violence on average 10 times every school day in New South Wales. The toxicity of what's happening with what they're watching, what they're playing, and also, of course, what they're drinking. I talked to you about this one the other day. These two online influencers, Logan Paul and KSI, again, boxers who actually fought each other and made millions and then launched their online presence, which is not quite as bad as Andrew Tate, according to my daughter, but it's still pretty out there with their misogynistic claims and what they promote. And then they've just launched this Prime energy drink. And as I said the other day, it's not available in Australia yet. The Prime sports drink is, and even what's in that, you start to wonder if it's good for our kids or not. But the Prime energy drink, kids are buying it online and bringing it into schools and selling it on the black market. Most of your kids will know what Prime energy drink is because it's a thing to have in the schoolyard these days. Back when I was a kid, it was just a yo-yo. Remember the yo-yo craze, or did that go around your school? Rubik's Cube craze, then the Rubik's Snake craze, some of those sorts of things. But these are the sorts of crazes that are going through our schools right now, and what's in them is of concern. The enemy has plans for our kids. The question is, do we? In Nehemiah chapter 4, we find that Nehemiah's finally got commission to go home and to rebuild Jerusalem, to rebuild the walls, to restore a place of worship. And if you read through there, it says the enemy said, before he even builds that wall, we'll come in and smash him. And they're all saying, the rumours coming through the Jews that live around, that the enemy are coming, they're on their way. And what does Nehemiah do? He prays. And then later on, the leaders come and say, Judah said, the strength of the labourers is failing, and there is so much rubbish that we are unable to rebuild the wall. And our adversaries said, they will neither know nor see anything till we all come into their midst and kill them and cause the work to cease. So it was, when the Jews who dwelt near them came, they told us 10 times, from whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. When you look around us and the things I've talked about in the last couple of days, you can see that there's so many challenges to be a parent in today's society. But as I said to you the other day, studies prove that the influence of a parent is more powerful than any other influence. That's the good news. But also the scary news for a dad, or a soon-to-be granddad, because that takes time. That takes time. And the enemy in today's world is time. We're getting busier and busier, and flexi hours now is no more 9 to 5. We're all out working, and often we as parents pass the ships in the night. One going to one shift and one going to the other. The enemy has made us busy. I thank God for the Sabbath, when we can stop, tune out of consumerism and just be family. And parents, protect your Sabbaths as much as you can, as that break out of the busy rat race and to spend time with your family, whether it's going to church or whether it's going bush. When we were kids, Mum and Dad sometimes would just say, today we're not going to church, we're going bush. And we'd all hop in the car, Mum would do a picnic, and we would just go and get lost. Find malleefowl nests and quandong trees, which are both very rare, but we could find them. Or chasing emus, or picking mushrooms, or whatever it was that we found when we went exploring across the bush and getting lost. And often we'll close Sabbath on the way home. We'll arrive home and there'll be a call from Mum's mum, Grandma. Where were you today? Your kids are going to leave the church because you were not at church. And Mum will get a lecture because we weren't there. Nana didn't know anything different. She used to, bless her, used to go through the newspapers, Nana would, and would cut anything she thought was sus out before we got to read it. So we'll get these newspapers and there'll be big holes, and you want to read the article on the other side sometimes, and that big hole, you only had to imagine what was there. We don't know that was better or worse, but she would censor all the media before we got to see it as kids. We love her. She's gone to a rest now, but yeah, a whole generation's in the church because of her influence in many ways. But also Mum and Dad's influence of just saying to the family, we're just going to get lost, but find each other in the process. And some of my best memories of Sabbath was not going to church, but getting lost in the bush somewhere. Not every week, pastors. Not every week. We did go, it was probably about once a quarter we'll do that. So yeah. And then it says back in verse 11, our adversaries, they will neither know nor say anything till we come into their presence and kill them and cause the work to cease. So it was, when the Jews who dwelt near them came, they told us 10 times, from whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. Therefore, I positioned men behind the lowest parts of the wall, at the openings, and I love this, and I set the people according to their families, with their swords, their spears, and their bows. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles, to the leaders, and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. And it happened when our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had brought their plot to nothing, that all of us returned to the wall and everyone to his work. And the wall went up. As I've outlined, there are so many enemies that want to take our families down. The enemy knows if he can win the war in our families, he can win the war in the church. And our Adventist understanding is that we are in the middle of the great controversy battle. That's our worldview. And things will get worse before Jesus comes again. So now is the time for us to stand at the gaps in the wall. If there's a single parent family, then I am going to stand alongside them and make sure there's 2, 3, 4, 5 mentors standing in the gap with those families. When divorce occurs and when families break down, and there are good reasons sometimes why a family does break down. Let me tell you, I've heard some of those horror stories. I hear them most weeks. I'm going to stand in the gap and stand up for those families and for those children. And where parents are weaker for whatever reason, I'm going to be there to help strengthen the gap through pathfinders and through adventurers and through our schools and through our programs and things we run to strengthen the gap and get around our families, because I want my families to be as shiny and awesome as possible in their homes. If mum and dad are the number one influences, then I'm going to make them the best that they can be. So, according to the research, this is my version of, it's probably harder to read there, this is my version. And the reason why I was a phone is because I had an app. I thought, what if I could drip feed every morning into the parents' phones? I know it's technology, and I've already talked about technology, but if they allow notifications and every morning it dinged with an app, with a little parenting tip of what they could do that day. Knowing that there will be 7 come through every week, and if parents do one of those things, is far more powerful than anything done at church. So that's what I did. Now, I'm working in the app back up again right now. For various reasons, it got taken down, not because they want to take it down, but Apple changed its policies, etc., and the app just sort of dropped off the edge for whatever reason. But I'll get that back again. But this is what the app was built around. The 7 gifts we can give our children that I believe grows resilience. This is reading the research, praying, reading the Bible, talking to people. Number 1, I'm going to go very quickly, because I want Jess to come up in a moment and give us a quick rundown on how to lock our phones down for our kids, or lock their phones down even more. Number 1, find safe mentors. If we can put 5 mentors in the life of our children, they're more likely to adopt the faith and values of those mentors. It's not saying, will you be a mentor, but it's those ad hoc mentors that occur as you gather together in families, at pathfinders and at church and adventurers and all those things. Having other adults in your child's life is crucial when it comes to growing our kids. Number 2, create family memories. Family memories give our children anchor points upon which to hang their faith. That's things like your birthday parties and Christmas and family holidays and high family events, whatever they might be, celebrating milestones, celebrating whatever occurs in the family together. Just being together and having those high moments. Create family memories. Give anchor points upon which to hang their faith. From the church perspective, it's things like run big camp. Just bringing kids to big camp. A huge memory event for them. Pathfinder camporees, high days, high weeks where the kids get together from all over Australia. Huge memory events. So run those big memory events for our kids. Really important. Number 3, spend quality time with your children. As I said right through, children spell love as Time. And by quality time, I mean is that Deuteronomy passage, when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, when you get up. So for us, it's meal times, travel time, bedtime, especially when they're younger, what I call the twilight zone, and when you get up, worship time. I could talk a whole lot about meals, about the research around having 3 or 4 meals. Just quickly, if they have a family meal, if a family does a family meal 3 or 4 times a week, those kids are likely to do better at school. I'll take that as a dad. The kids are more likely to not get involved in at-risk activities. I'll take that as a dad. And the kids are more likely to adopt the values of the family. I'll take that as a dad, just by doing family meals. Gift number 4, love God as a parent and show it. Let your kids catch you praying, opening your Bible, reading, worshipping. Let them catch you in the habit of going to church and volunteering, being up the front. Better still, get your kids up the front alongside you, singing, etc., doing volunteering with you in church. But love God and show it. If mum and dad are number 1 when it comes to passing on faith, then let your kids catch you doing that. Powerful. Number 5, tell awesome stories. Stories give our children the weapons they need to defeat the dragons. And the dragons are out there. Read stories. Make sure you get them involved in reading. My mum had all of us read to her every day while she was getting dinner ready for 20 minutes. You know what book it was? Start off with Dick and Dora and Spot. But then it went on to other books, and we'll sit there and we'll read to her. And she got all of her kids to read to her. And then she read to us. Most Friday nights, she would open the book called The Angel Said Australia, written by Ross Goldstone, and would read to us the stories of the Australian story of how the Adventist church grew in Australia. It's an older book now. You'll find it sometimes in second-hand book sales, but powerful, powerful stories. Amanda Bewes and the AUC have just released a whole series based on that, The Ancient Australia Stories for Kids. At your Adventist Book Centre. If you can't get it there, talk to me, because I have my own stash as well. Not here. I didn't bring them. I should have, but they're all sitting in my office. But I see the power of stories important. Stories, particularly biblical stories, give our kids an identity, and identity is a big thing these days, that is older than 100 years. I want my kids to have a 100-year-old identity. And just by reading Bible stories, it gives them a 100-year-old identity. Brain research proves that when a person is reading and when the children are listening, the same patterns in the brain are opened up and stimulated. It's almost like the child is in that story with you. Now, here's the thing. You don't need to give them the morals of the story. Just by reading the story, they get the morals. They sink in. There's a whole lot of research around kids that are reading stories are naturally more empathetic and naturally have more compassion. Just by reading stories. I'll take that as a dad as well, especially in today's age. Number 6, love your spouse and show it. Now, where you're a single parent, don't despair. That's where the 5 mentors come in. But a strong marriage is powerful in showing our children what God looks like. And here's a tip for today. And it's proven by research. if you want to grow your marriage, and this is free, by the way, but thank me for it later. If you want to grow your marriage and build intimacy and provide a sense of security for your children, then embark upon every day, here it is, a 6-second kiss. A 6-second kiss. You choose where you do it, whether it's when you go to work or you come home. And when you're kissing, 6 seconds is long. And your kids will say, yuck, mum and dad. But they'll feel a sense of security more than ever before, and it grows intimacy. Guaranteed. Give it a try. My marriage tip for today, 6-second kiss. Oh, I'll flick to the next one quickly. And number 7, and most importantly probably, is serve together. Families that serve together grow together spiritually, especially the children. When Jesus asked what the most important commandment is, he quotes the Shema passage, Deuteronomy chapter 6, 4-12. And then he says, the second is like it. Love God. The second is love your neighbour as yourself. He knew the vertical and he knew the dimensional. And research is now proving that families that serve together, it provides a spiritual catalyst of spirituality like nothing else can. So, serve in a soup kitchen, serve in the food bank, serve in whatever it might be. Go on a mission trip, go on a stormco, go overseas, whatever that might take. But families that serve together grows the faith of the kids exponentially. It's that spiritual catalyst that takes from here and puts it onto a higher plane. Powerful in promoting spiritual resilience in your children. So, I've written these books because, as I said, I want my families to be as shiny and awesome as possible. They're not here today because I've shifted conferences and I've got to get reprints done. I'm actually updating all of these at the moment with the latest research because they're a few years now old. But they are online at disciple.org.au, the Union Discipleship page, under family, under resources, children's reading guides. You'll find them there. If you go through, if you can't find them, I'll help you negotiate to it. But it's there in the children's resources page. And they'll be back on the app, disciple.org.au, the Union Discipleship page, disciple.org.au. There's a new one there. There's a couple of new ones that aren't there that are on the page as well. One on Intergenerate and one on yesterday's presentation. More detail is about to go up as well on that site. And when the app's back up, they'll be back on the app as well. So they're all available, and they're just all the research summarised that encourages you to be as shiny as possible with your children. What can the church do? According to research, the best way to keep your kids in the church is to provide intergenerational worship. Now, the Adventist Church is pretty good at this. Other churches are still wanting this. I'm part of Intergenerate Australia, which is helping churches move towards full intergenerational worship, where mum, dad, youth, kids, in-laws, outlaws, all worship together. Research says that is the best way to make faith sticky from a church perspective is to worship together with everyone assembled. I conclude with that verse in Psalm 78 that says, we will not hide these truths. We will tell the next generation the things of the Lord. The church is only ever one generation from extinction. That's why I do what I do. That's why I do what I can to make parents and families as shiny as possible so that faith is passed on in a powerful way to the next generation. Now, I'm going to ask Jess, I've got 5 minutes according to my watch here on my iPad. I love my technology. I'm going to ask Jesse to just talk a little bit about how to, when you do give your kids their mobile phone, what sort of a agreement, what sort of thing can you do to make sure they're safe online? So thanks, Jesse.
Hi, how you going? All right, so I have 4 kids, and I'm well qualified to do this. So they all have devices, and it's interesting to see what they actually install if they are given free rein. There's a lot of apps that go around our schools, and you were talking about Andrew Tate and things like this. And there's such detrimental things that are actually out online. Snapchat being one of them, where it literally causes things to disappear. So you can't read any of their messages. You can't tell what they're sending other people. So Snapchat is a big no-no straight away. Like if
so while it disappears, other people take screenshots of that picture,
correct.
Whatever else.
Yeah, they do.
And then it's out there. But
look, even at locations like this, we have issues with kids sharing videos and things like that. We did prayer requests via a digital format in the teens last year. And if you guys actually heard what these teens were dealing with versus what we thought they were dealing with, it was like up here. And it was incredible how bad the stuff that they were involved in was, how desperate some of their situations were, how much they are hurting and how much they're suffering, and how much they don't feel like our church or their parents are actually doing anything to help them. And it's time that we actually change that. Now, on the screen is something called Family Link, and this is for Android devices. And there's another one that is actually for Apple devices, and you can go to your app store and you can search for a thing called Our Pact, P-A-C-T. I didn't have a slide for that one, but Our Pact on Apple devices is, unfortunately, Apple, you're always paying for stuff. So that one you have to pay for, whereas Family Link on Android is completely free. Now, Android, with this app, I basically monitor every single text message that goes through my daughter's phone. I monitor every message that goes through her messenger, and I can see what pictures she...
You can see messages?
I can see messages.
Wow.
I can see absolutely everything. There is not one thing that goes unnoticed. If she installs a new app, I can tell her, you're not allowed that app. Or if you have app restrictions, she's not allowed to install anything, or she won't even see anything that's above PG rated.
I was with Jesse just the other day when he sent her a message saying, I saw you download that game.
Yep.
And you said, not happy, get outside and play, more or less.
Yeah, basically I sent her a message saying, you are not spending time here on your phone, go and hang out with your friends. But it was because of the fact that my app gave me a notification that said, hey, Bianca has installed a new game. So don't harass Bianca over that one, please. Leave her alone. Yeah. Look, it comes down to the fact that, do you realize how much time the majority of kids actually spend on devices per day? On any given weekend, children spend 4 to 7 hours on a device.
The Australian average is 7 to 8 hours at the moment.
There you go.
That's current, more recent. 7 to 8 hours for teenagers, 4 to 5 hours for tweens.
So that's 40 to 50% of their entire waking life that they're spending on a device, getting trained by that device. And if you knew what these app developers and what, game developers and things like that are actually trying to do, it's literally trying to addict them to things from the word go. So they become addicted to these stupid little games because a lot of these app developers are actually funded by poker machine operators, by all sorts of things like this. And it's incredible how much the system is actually convoluted to make it so that your kids are getting addicted to things now so they will be in the future. And if you want them struggling with addiction, just let them have unlimited games all the time. They'll guarantee to struggle with addiction.
Jesse. We did a whole series on addiction in the brain, but yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right. You're backing up what I said.
So Family Link is phenomenal on Android phones, and you can also set a bedtime. So you can make sure that phone or device turns off at 8:30 and it doesn't wake up until 6:30 in the morning. Yes, they can still send an emergency message to you, okay? But the thing is that you don't want to give them free rein. And our pact on iPhones and iPads does exactly the same thing. I'm sorry you have to pay for it. Poor Apple users.
Yep.
There you go.
Thank you, Jesse. So you want to talk further about this, talk to Jesse because he's a guru on this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And this sort of thing, when you child, you give them that drug, that mobile phone.
Love it.
Have this discussion. Tell them you will be locking it down. You will be turning it off at this point. Of course, it's negotiable. You will see what they're doing. So that's the agreement that you have. Because of the fact it's such a dangerous device, you want to have that good agreement in place and also the consequences for when they step over those boundaries.
So you can also see where they
are. And then as they get
are.
older, you can slowly relax some of that, but hopefully they've learnt some good habits while that brain is developing.
So you can also see where they are as well.
You got a question?
At what age do you might start listening?
So no, they recommend, like researchers showed that if about 13 to 14, you can start relaxing those rules because they've already learnt good, positive behavior. But with these devices, like it saves arguments as well. I mean, I know of parents that have argued with their kids about a device. So give me the device, I'm taking it off you. And the kid won't give up the device. So what do? Do you smack the kid down? Do you you can't. Yeah, well, that too. But still, if they have 24 hours of battery life, then, you're kind of messed up there a little bit. Well, these apps allow you to turn that device off from your phone. So there's no argument. It's just, I'm sorry, I've turned your device off. You were doing the wrong thing. Have a nice day.
As Gillespie said yesterday, he said that parents need to harden up.
Yep.
When it comes to our technology and device. We're hardened up in other places, but technology, we don't understand it, but we need to harden up and be there. As I said, remember that the brain doesn't fully develop till 25. I didn't give my kids a mobile phone until they were in year 10. Hold off as long as you can. That's the advice. But thank you. Talk to Jesse later on. I'm going to pray. If you want to come and talk further, you can, but those who want to go can go. Let's just bow our heads. Our loving Father in heaven, indeed, the enemy does have plans for our children. The enemy is running around to and fro as time is shortening and he knows that he's going down, but he's doing all he can to get into our families, to undermine those walls. But thankfully, like Nehemiah, we are people of prayer. We are a community of mentors that can stand in those gaps for our families. That's the church's job. So that those walls do not get undermined. And as the parents build brick by brick character and development and the Bible and morals and values that builds those walls in their lives, we can be those people who stand in the gaps. So we pause and we pray for our families. We pray for our churches. We pray for our teachers. We pray for all those who are inputting into our kids. And we know that with your help, together we can grow a generation of spiritual champions that will turn this world upside down. Daniels and Esthers and Josephs and little maids, and the world needs those people now more than ever. So I pray that this camp, these workshops will be a spark that goes back to our churches across New South Wales. And we also open those worship boxes day by day and spend time with our families. That this will be a conference where people look and see a generation of spiritual champions. So leave ourselves in your care. So pray in thy name. Amen. See you tomorrow.